Hey guys, this is Matt here, and in this video we're going to be taking some of this, and maybe some of this, and a bunch of other stuff, and turning it into something that looks like this. A completely homemade, from scratch, custom Lego gun for your minifigures. So if you're at all interested in trying this for yourself, or you just want to see me playing around with sharp things and trying not to cut myself, please stay tuned for the rest of the video. One small thing to mention though, this tutorial is rather difficult and does take some fairly advanced handiwork with an X-Acto knife and some other tools. So if you're not quite comfortable with that, you might want to get comfortable just making some more simple custom things before you go ahead and try this out. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. Alright, so for the material we are going to be using, I have 3 pieces of plastic that I got from an ice cream tub, 2 that were from the sides that are just a little bit thinner, and 1 thicker piece that was from the middle. Now all of these sandwiched together, just like that, are about as thick as a Lego stick, like this, that can fit perfectly into a Lego minifigure's hands. So once you found 3 pieces that all add up to the thickness of a Lego stick like this, then you can move on to cutting out the shapes. Alright, if you already have a Brickworms gun or a custom gun you would like to copy and make another of, go ahead and stick that down to your plastic piece using a little bit of tack or tape. If you don't, I will be giving you some approximate measurements here in centimeters so you can kind of rough out your design. So for this top section of the gun, we want it to be a total from the front to the stock of about 2 centimeters here.
I'm just going to trace this around the sight.
The stock is a little shorter than 2 centimeters long.
So again, if you're just drawing this freehand, just add a little bit of a curve down at the bottom to about a centimeter.
And then the butt of the stock is just under 4 millimeters. And then when you're coming back up under the stock, add that little ledge down there. The handle is just about 5 millimeters or half a centimeter. And just do a little part for the bottom. Now don't worry about adding stuff like the trigger guard or anything. We will do that once this is all cut out. But once you've traced it or freehand drawn it, you can just pull it off like this, fill in all the gaps. And at this point, we're just leaving the front flat, just like that. Alright, so once you have your gun traced out, you're just going to take a sharp knife and start to cut it out. Now, if you traced it, you're going to want to be working inside the lines, as the lines will have been drawn slightly wider than the actual gun size. So we're just going to go ahead and then just mark it a few times and then push through the plastic. Alright, so once you have one piece cut out, you're going to want to go ahead and trace it out onto your other pieces. Alright, so once you have your 3 pieces cut out just like this, you're going to want to take your middle piece, in my case it's my thickest piece here, and you're going to want to cut a little notch or a little divot in the front, just like this. Pull that out quickly. this is going to make room for the barrel when you glue it all together, and that's exactly what we are doing next. We're going to be gluing all 3 pieces together with the piece that has the notch in it in the middle. Alright, so once you've glued your gun all together, it should look a little bit like this. You want to make sure it's all glued together super well so it won't snap apart for the next part, which is going to be filing it down with a fine file. So we're just going to go over all the big flat surfaces and try to make them as even as possible so we don't have any unevenness with the different pieces of plastic. Alright, so once you file it down to a point where you're happy with it, you're going to want to take your knife that used to cut it out and start to just round the edges off just by kind of slicing down. At this point, once you've sanded and rounded the edges as best you can go ahead, grab a minifigure hand and just see how well it fits into the hand. Now I did a pretty good job measuring, so mine fits fairly well, almost a little bit loose, but it's better to be on the loose side than the thick side, because if it's a bit loose you can always add some paint or some finish to add a bit of girth to it. So now we will move on to attaching a barrel. Alright, so for the barrel I'm going to be using a piece of a large paper clip here. And you want to find a relatively flat section of that paper clip and then stick it in the slot you cut into the middle piece when we were cutting at the plastic. Now this piece is a little bit bent at the end, this paper clip piece, but that's alright because we're going to be using the back end, which is all straight. So now you're just going to mark off approximately how long you want it sticking out. I'm going to say about there. And now you can pull it out and go ahead and cut it. Alright, so once you have it cut, it should be around this size depending on how large you made the notch. Just gonna make sure that fits in the front, just how you want it, like that. And then you can go ahead and glue it in. Alright, so once you've done all of that, we can move on to making the trigger guard, or the hole where the trigger would be, the hollow there. And I'm going to be drilling this out using a 1/16 drill bit, but another method of doing this is just taking a needle and holding it under a candle flame or a lighter flame until it's very hot and then melting through the plastic if you do not have a drill to use. Alright, slight lighting change, but the next step is going to be thinning out the magazine. As you can see on our example model here, it is slightly thinner than the rest of the gun. So how you're going to do that is we're going to start by cutting a diagonal line from the bottom of the barrel here to the bottom of the trigger guard. And this does not have to go very deep, just enough that it kind of shows, but definitely not even through the first layer of plastic. And now once that line's cut, you're gonna very, very carefully, you might want to tape this down or something, you don't want to be holding this down with your fingers, but very carefully start to slice a thin layer off the top here. Alright, back to better lighting. So now we're going to be adding on some of these lines here, like the one in the front of the scar that runs horizontally, and then the 2 lines on the other side of the magazine that run vertically. So how we're going to do that is just by cutting lines in here at a 45-degree angle. So we're going to start with the magazine. We're going to angle our knife at 45 degrees and just slice down where we want one side of the line, just like that. Now we're going to take the knife, turn it the opposite way at about 45 degrees, so 90 degrees from where we started. Line it up and slice down, and hopefully with a little bit of extra cleanup work you should be able to get a thin line of plastic to come out and give you that vertical or horizontal line. One thing to mention before we go any farther now that I forgot to mention earlier is we're going to want to remove, using our knife, the 2 outer layers of plastic in our 3-layer plastic sandwich of the gun just around the trigger guard here, just like on this one here. So it's just thinner and it's just around the bottom part there, and it was going to look just like this. So I'm going to have to clean that up a little bit, probably with a little piece of sandpaper or a file. But you kind of just want the trigger guard to just be the middle piece right in there, because on the model we're using it is quite a bit thinner than the rest of the gun. Alright guys, so if you've come this far, first off, a huge thank you to everybody who's just viewing this video, because this is going to be a pretty long video. But for those of you who are actually trying to make this, hopefully you'll have something that looks fairly similar to this or along the same lines. Of course, every custom you make will be unique in its own way. And you have to kind of learn to improvise, that if you make a mistake, maybe you cut the stock a bit too short, you just kind of change it up and maybe make it a folding stock instead and add an extra piece and improvise that way. But that's just about it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to be going over painting this all up, giving it a nice base coat of black, and then adding some of the extra details that we did not add on from this other scar. But otherwise, once again, thank you for watching this. God bless, have a great day, and this is Bisako Mad.